This is my great, great pleasure to introduce today Sheena Wright. Sheena is the president and the CEO of the nonprofit United Way of New York City. Actually, she is the first woman to lead this organization in its more than 80-year history. Congratulations, Sheena. And we are very lucky to have Sheena because not only she's a very busy women leader, but she's also a star. She was named #1 on the City and State of New York Nonprofit Power 100 list. And this list of leaders recognizes the nonprofit leaders who are serving the most vulnerable New Yorkers. It's an honor to have you, Sheena, today, because I think in this time where we are shaping the new norm, the work that you're doing is really making a difference in making economic recovery compatible with social justice. In a year which has been filled with unprecedented need, nonprofits have been stepped up to ensure continued support for vulnerable New Yorkers. You have transitioned your programs online. You have continued to maintain support for all the low-income New Yorkers. LVMH has been on your side. You have been the one initiating the partnership with LVMH and with our CEO Anish Melwani. Thank you for that. So my first question, Sheena, is out of all your achievements, you have put in place Read New York City. You have recently launched a campaign for equity. What are you the most proud of?
Well, first, let me thank you, Karin, for your leadership and friendship and partnership and all of your colleagues at LVMH and the work that we are doing really in service and support of New York City. I mean, as you said, this has been a year like none other, right, for all of us. And we've been moving at like such breakneck speed. I appreciate your question to just pause and reflect on what we want to lift up and celebrate. So I would say that there are two things. One of the things that I'm very proud of is how United Way of New York City and its partners and stakeholders have really shown up in this crisis moment. We have worked very hard for many years to ensure that we are an organization that is meeting the urgent, critical needs of New York, and that we're making a meaningful, measurable, and lasting difference. And I have to say, when COVID-19 hit, immediately we sprung into action. There were such urgent crises, right? Whether it was around emergency food, whether it was around making sure that people had access to testing. In those early months, many Black and Brown communities in particular could not get a COVID-19 test. And that was one of the things that really increased infection rates and death because people didn't know they had the disease. So the government came to us. They came to United Way of New York City because we have 600 trusted community-based organizations on the ground that are on the front lines, and we're on the front lines. So we were able to activate them and resource them to get people access to testing and now to the vaccine, which is also a challenge. One of the other things that we immediately did was respond to our small business community. Because we are the United Way, our community said they reached out to us. This was unprecedented. What they needed to know, what should they do, where should they go? Again, we went to our government partners and they said, you're the United Way. Convene your partners and stakeholders to help us find a solution. And so we launched an initiative to really focus on some of our most challenged businesses, our businesses of color, Black owned businesses and other businesses, to make sure that their needs were met. So really being able to show up in times of crisis in ways that really make an impact. And then the other thing I would say as part of that work is our ability, and I love that you have a theme of learning, our ability to help people learn and understand, like, how did we get here and what it's going to take in order to get us where we need to go, and have a measure of faith that will get there. So I'll give one brief example. Read NYC is an initiative that you mentioned. We started back in 2013, really understanding if young people have not learned to read on grade level by third grade, it is the biggest predictor of them graduating from high school. They will not graduate from high school. So it's a huge marker. We also know that third grade reading, prison planners look at third grade test scores to determine how many prison beds they need to build. So we took this on in 2013 in the poorest congressional district in the country. We mobilized nonprofits, volunteers, corporate partners, and others to work on a plan to move the needle for a collection of students and families, 3,000, where 9% of kids were reading on grade level. We moved all the way up to 50% of kids reading on grade level in really just 5 years' time, when it had been that way for many years. And we're not stopping until we're done, until we can scale it. But the proud moment is when we started. One of our schools in the South Bronx was a principal where 0% of the kids were reading on grade level. And if you had asked her at the beginning, how many kids do you think we can get there? She said 20%. That was because she was like, I know all the challenges, I know all the issues, 20%. 5 years later, we actually had a funder coming through to do a tour, and he asked her that same question. Now her school went from 0% to 54%. He asked her, how many people do you think can get there? She said 80%. And in that moment, it's if we don't cultivate the belief that we can achieve our big goals, we will never get there. But we get that belief cultivated because we've learned, we've tried, we have some evidence. And so that was really just kind of reassuring that if we really can get stuff done, we can move the needle.
Cultivate the belief. I love that. Thank you, Sheena, and congratulations for the results for equity in education. What I want to stress as well is that, United Way, like for the United Nations Women Empowerment Principle, you have this holistic approach. Mm-hmm. Okay, you have this approach of, giving better access to education, but also business opportunity, but also health, because everything is intertwined. Yes. And I think it's very important, especially in this time of crisis and shaping the recovery. You are a hero, not only a hero, but a hero, and you have made the difference. So I want to ask you this question: where does your amazing energy come from? Where does your unwavering commitment to social justice and equity comes from? What have been the life events which has shaped who you are?
Right. It really definitely comes from my own experience and journey. I am a New Yorker, just proud New Yorker, and was born in the South Bronx. So that very community there where I talked about Read NYC, we walk across the city. But the South Bronx, when I was growing up, was really one of the most challenged communities in the country. And unfortunately, it still is. And my mom was a teenage mom who had a lot of challenges and obstacles just by the nature of being, 17 with 2 school-age children, really trying to advance her education, but also trying to make sure that we had opportunities to reach our full potential. And I remember being in those classrooms, unfortunately, in schools that were under-resourced, that had, not good educational opportunities, and the struggle that my mother had to go through to make sure that we could access higher quality educational opportunities and other opportunities so that we could really kind of thrive. And when I think about all that she did to kind of lay the path in the struggle, and how so many of my friends and neighbors just did not have those opportunities for a variety of reasons. That's what drives me, like to continue to make sure that those opportunities are available and accessible to everyone, because everyone really deserves the opportunity to reach their full potential. And, like that principal who talked about the 80% at least, I just feel like I can't rest until that's done, until you know, to those who much is given, right? We're all very blessed, and what we do with those blessings, what we do with our opportunities to help others is really what drives me at my core.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sheena. Making sure that the opportunities are available. Thank you for giving back. You have been the first women CEO of United Way of New York City. So I'd like to ask you a more personal question. How did you develop your career as a leader and as a women leader? And did you have specific mentors, allies? Did you have specific obstacles that you overcome? And can you share some of them with us?
Sure. I definitely had mentors and role models in my leadership journey. And really the first one was my mother. I call my mother St. Jude, who was the patron saint of lost causes. My mother will take on what seems like an impossible challenge, and like with determination and grit, make sure that she overcomes it, right? Being that teenage mother, kind of persevering. But my mother also started a nonprofit when she was young, because she saw through her own experience, you know, as a real challenge, what teenage moms were faced with. So she started a program helping teenage moms. It's called Project Redirection, redirect their lives like she had. And then when she was doing this was in the early 80s, the HIV/AIDS pandemic was hitting the world, and certainly hit communities of color and low-income communities. And she saw actually a lot of these young women being infected by HIV and dying. So then she started an organization focused on HIV and AIDS, and she had a wonderful career for many years. And just watching her trajectory has been a huge model, and other women leaders. And also there have been men who've been allies. When I became the first CEO, woman CEO of United Way of New York City, the board chair, you know, it was just amazing. Bob Kippers. Now, Bob was a partner at Deloitte, and he's white male from Minnesota, right? But he was so focused, invested in my success, and really did everything in his power to ensure that I had the support, development, connectivity, exposure, advice that has just been absolutely wonderful. So, you know, I think we have to be able to see ourselves, right, kind of in leaders, as well as have, you know, others who we don't necessarily see ourselves, but really take a vested interest in us. And in terms of obstacles, I would say one of the consistent obstacles, quite frankly, as a woman of color, has been people underestimating your abilities and capabilities. It's just, I'm always a little bit surprised by it, but it's a real obstacle. And I noticed and appreciated that underestimation very early in my career and my trajectory. I went to a boarding school for high school, predominantly white school, coming from the South Bronx, got a full scholarship. This was a part of my mother's, like, making sure that we had access to high quality educational opportunities. And I had a classmate, you know, who just was so surprised, I guess, by me being there and with him. And he said, you know, you're Black, you're a woman, and you come from the South Bronx. He said, isn't that like having 3 strikes? And I thought, wow, you know, 3 strikes, doesn't that mean you're out? Like, I don't, that's very difficult to imagine. And I said, well, no, I'm, you know, the captain of the cross country team. I'm the top, you know, at the top of the class academically. I'm, you know, very engaged and successful here. Maybe those things are not liabilities, but maybe they're strengths. So I feel like along the way, there's always assumptions about your capabilities that have to be overcome. You know, Condoleezza Rice wrote her book at Twice as Good, right? You have to be twice as good. So that's just been an interesting kind of through line through my career.
Maybe that's where representation is important, and representation at the highest level. I've seen your very strong commitment during Women History Month to acknowledge the women on the board of United Way of New York City. I think you are 14, right, women?
Yes.
So, why is gender and racial representation important in an organization board?
It's critically important. When I joined the United Way of New York City board, it was 82% white male, great guys, wonderful. But as the first woman, I had some real priorities in terms of representation, and first woman, Black woman, woman of color. And now I'm proud to say we're, kind of approaching, 35-40% of women representation. And it is so important, because it is just a clear acknowledgement that we need diversity of perspective, experience, opinion. Like, that is going to get us the best results and outcomes at the end of the day. And when we don't have that, we will just not be as successful. And also kind of debunking that notion, because I think the United Way was actually formed by the corporate sector. So it's really seen as a corporate kind of type entity in terms of our partnership with companies. So it was very male, kind of in its leadership and composition, but really appreciating that women can be very strong business leaders, as strong, and in some instances, stronger. It is really important to demonstrate. Again, it's debunking those myths. And the stereotypes that people might have and hold, and again, planting that seed of like what's possible and what we should believe in as we move forward.
And you are moving forward. You are moving the needle, Sheena, definitely. I've seen your ability to leverage the United Way of New York City unique position at the intersection of government, corporate, and community to drive the success. And during the last Jeridon Gala, you mentioned teamwork, the power of collaboration. So very concretely, how can we engage with you and with United Way of New York City as individual, but also as an organization?
Absolutely. So the way we solve the big social problems that we have, income inequality, hunger, educational equity, health equity, all of these things, is through partnership. It's through collaborative aligned action. And what we need from corporate partners, in addition to the financial investment, which is important, so we also need time and talent. We need time and talent. So when we work with our corporate partners in LVMH, you guys are just such a wonderful example, as we really curate all of your unique assets, gifts, and attributes as individuals and as an institution. We know what the community's needs are, right? So if we're talking about, for instance, trying to really help our small business owners of color, and we know that you all have real understanding and strength and can be mentors, volunteers, guides, help support those businesses along the journey. If we talk about our women who have been, certainly impacted and displaced in this pandemic, low-income women of color, and that they need help with their resumes and their interview skills, and then you can offer that. We'd love to engage people that have specific skill sets that communities need. And that's how we're going to get to the solutions. That's how we're going to get to our big problems being solved.
Okay, message 100% clear. And we'll get back to you on that, sure. And my last question is, what kind of advice would you give to your younger self?
Right, and I love this question because it does force you to kind of like take a step back. I would tell younger Sheena, slow down. I feel like I was in such a hurry all the time. I don't even know why. Like, I was just like, oh, I gotta get this done and that done and this done. It's almost like something was breathing down my neck, and did not have the real kind of, I guess, discipline or focus to stop, take a breath, learn, and then move forward. But it was like this hurtling forward. And Now that I'm a little bit older, you know, I so appreciate, you know, being a lifelong learner. That is a learning journey, and that you actually have to make time and space for it. You can't just be rushing ahead. You get better and stronger in the pauses. So that's what I would say. And it's still something I'm trying to learn and cultivate in myself every day.
Thank you so much, Sheena. Thank you. And I hope actually the journey between LVMH and United Way will be very long.
Yes,
and very
me too.
sustainable. Thank you so much. Thank you for your transparency. Thank you for sharing your personal story as well. Means a lot to us. And to all the participants, if you want to share your time and your talent with Sheena and with United Way of New York City, please connect with us. And we also have some, you know, activation between United Way and LVMH as well through the beautiful world of the volunteer task force led by Amandine and Jessica. So thank you, Sheena.